Okay, today we're going to talk about a way to control ProPresenter for free without using a clicker or app that you actually have to pay for. First of all, we're going to use this app called HTTP Request Shortcuts. And what this will do is it'll send an API command to ProPresenter to go to a previous and next slide. So we're going to keep it really simple. The API can do lots of different things, but we're going to keep it really simple and just go to previous and next slide cues. The app we're going to use is this HTTP Request Shortcuts. The other one where it's kind of optional, I'm going to use an app called KinScreen. And the only reason I'm using this app is to make sure that my phone stays on while I'm using it on stage. So I don't want the screen timing out and going blank during the presentation. I just want to make sure the phone stays on during that time. That's the only reason I'm using this app here. So first of all, there's a few different ways that it's already possible to do this. The first way, or more official ways to do this, ProPresenter Remote. This is an app that you can get that will control ProPresenter. It's available for both Android and iOS. This is the Android version here. This is the iOS version here. They do both cost about $5, $4.99 to buy. And just a note, I've had very poor luck with the Android version. I have had better luck with the iOS version. We have some iPads at church. That seems to work a lot better than the Android version. The Android version I just never had very good luck with. I'm not going to go into any of the details. There are some other kind of third-party apps that you can get too. There's one, ProRemote for ProPresenter by Alex Korn, and another Pro Advanced Remote by Jeff Michels. I didn't find any other third-party stuff on the Apple Play Store. We're actually going to kind of build our own, in a sense, using some apps and the ProPresenter API. The other thing you can do that's very popular is use some clickers, presentation clickers. Logitech makes some that work pretty well. They do have a limited range. The thing I don't like about some of these, and even the apps, the official apps, is they're kind of complicated to use. There's more buttons than they really need, in my opinion. For instance, this one here, which is a pretty popular one, this R800, has like an on-off button and has a timer. This one has the best range of, I think, all of the Logitech options. It's just more complicated than it needs to be, I think. When I handed my pastor or speaker the remote to go back and forth in their presentation, I just want two buttons, really, a backward and a forward button. I don't want them to get confused. Just keep it simple. That's why I'm not a huge fan of these. They work great. They're basically just a keyboard. If you can put a keyboard into your computer, just plug these in, the receiver, and you're good to go. One that I do use a lot is the Dsan Perfect Q Micro. And I've actually got one right here. Here's the remote for them. This is a 2-button remote. You can get versions of this with more remotes. The cost is actually the same, no matter which version you get, I think. But this is the remote right here. 2 buttons, a forward button, green, and a back button, red there. Really simple to use. Their range is great on them. I've never had a problem with the range. The only really downside of them is the cost. This one here is the Perfect Q Micro. This is the transmitter. Here's the receiver, just a simple USB plug you plug into there. The only really downside of them is the cost. Another downside is of all these clickers is ProPresenter has to be active on the computer in order for it to trigger. So it's just a keyboard. It's doing the same thing as a keyboard would do with the spacebar or the previous and next forward and back arrow buttons. So if you're like in an edit mode in ProPresenter, for instance, the arrow keys will just move your cursor around instead of actually going back and forth in the presentation. So one case where that can come into play in church is if your operator at ProPresenter is typing in a stage message, while they're trying to advance the slides on stage. So in that case, they're in a text box the keyboard is inputting stuff to the text box. This will only go back and forth in that text box while they're doing that. That is one of the reasons why I started looking into this remote utility that is free. It doesn't have that limitation. It uses the ProPresenter API in a web request or an HTTP request to get around that limitation. What we're going to be using is the HTTP request shortcuts and this KinScreen screen control. It's kind of optional, like I said. So I'm going to demonstrate how to do that. First of all, what I have here, here's my ProPresenter instance over here. I have my phone over here, which is, at the moment, is off. The screen is off right now, and I'll unlock that a second. There we go. So I have the ProRemote app on here. I'm not going to go into that. Here's the HTTP Shortcuts app, and here's the KinScreen app. But first of all, what we got to do is set ProPresenter up so that it is configured to accept the HTTP request. And in order to do that, let's just go to Preferences, Network, or Network Preferences, and all you got to do here is Enable Network. So there's a couple things you want to make a note of here. First of all, my network name, I'm going to be using this network name. I can copy that right now. And the port number. Now, the other thing you want to keep in mind is this IP address here. Now, in my case, the router that I'm using, I can use this network name when I do the HTTP request or HTTP shortcut, but you might need to use the IP address depending on your network configuration. You might need to set this up to be static so that it doesn't change. Okay, so we're just going to enable this network. We don't have to enable any of this other stuff here. We don't have to enable the remote app, the stage app, or this link stuff here. All we got to do is enable this network here. This button here, it's API, and if you click on that, it will open up a web page, and it will show you all the different API calls that you can do in here. But for us, for our purposes, we're just interested in two of them, which are way at the bottom here. The trigger, this trigger next, and trigger previous. Those are the only two that we're going to do. I'm going to keep this really simple for now, and that's all we're going to do. Once you have the apps installed, you have this set up. Now we're going to go into the HTTP shortcut app and configure that. So I'm going to open that. I haven't opened this yet. I've just installed this. We don't have any shortcuts yet, so we're going to add a shortcut. Add a shortcut. And for our purposes here, we're just going to create one from scratch. Shortcut name, I'm going to say Pro7 back, I'll say. And over here is a little icon. We can click that. And we're just going to use a built-in icon. I haven't messed with the uploading your own icon. So the one I want is way at the bottom here. Go to the bottom. Here we go. That's it. So we're doing the back button first. Click on that, and on this particular button you can change the color, so I'm going to make that red. Okay, so now I got that configured. Description is optional. I don't even know what it does. But here's the meat of it, right here. We're going to go to Basic Request Settings. Just tap on that. The method is going to be GET, and the URL, this is going to be from that API documentation. So from the API documentation, you're going to put your IP address in here. In my case, instead of the IP address, I'm going to put in my network name, which I copied before. I'm going to paste that in there, HP 200. We're going to put a colon in there. And then we're going to put in the port. This port 1025. Copy that. Click that into here. Most of you would probably want to put this IP address in here. For me, this HP, my computer name works pretty well. Okay, and then again, go back to our documentation here. Our documentation for previous was /v1/trigger/previous. I'm just going to type that in here too, /v1/trigger/previous. slash trigger slash previous. That's all right. So that's it. We're basically done. There's a couple other things here that we want to do though. Response handling. Whenever you send this command out to the network, it's basically just loading this web page. You can even type this into a web browser, hit enter, and it's going to do whatever we tell it to do. Response handling. I'm going to click on or tap on response handling. I say on success, I don't want to do anything. If it's successful, I really don't want to show you any messages. I just want to go to the next slide, or previous slide in this case. On failure, I'm going to leave that alone, and I think that's all I need to do here. Okay, so that's done. That's all I need to do here. Now I'm going to, in ProPresenter, I'm going to close out of this. I've got this slide active right now, and I can test this out by clicking this arrow button here. So if I click the arrow button, it went to the previous slide, which is exactly what I wanted to do. Click the check mark there. So now I've got this HTTP shortcut. All I got to do is click it again in the app, and it goes back to another slide. So I got the back button done. Now we can just do the next button. So, whoops, I clicked the wrong button there. We can do one of two things. We can add another button. What I'm going to do is I can duplicate this button and just edit that. So by holding down on this button, you can get to this context menu here and to duplicate and edit stuff. So I'm going to, this one we just created here, Pro7 next. Let's change our icon. There it is. And this one we're going to put up here. This kind of green or yellow. Sorry, I'm colorblind, so I probably told it wrong in what. Okay. Now I'm going to tap on this basic request settings here. Method is get again. It's the previous. This is just going to be next. Click the back button. It automatically saves that there. And we should be good. We can test it out. This goes to the next, next, next. Over here, down there again. Next, next. Yep. Working fine. There. All done. Now, I'm essentially done doing exactly what I needed to do here. If I get out of here, go back on my app here, if I just tap on my app, I'm done. I got this Pro7 next. Now I want to do a couple things here. You can rearrange this a little bit better. So in order to do that, I'm going to click on this categories here. And by default in this this app, you can create multiple different categories, which is just kind of a way to organize your shortcuts. In my case, I don't only have two, but maybe you want to create multiple categories for different spaces in your church. For example, the worship center, the youth space, fellowship hall, wherever you have ProPresenter installed. I'm going to click on this category and edit category. I'll call it a name. I'm going to type in, let's call it worship center. List type. Now here's where you can kind of change the layout a little bit. I'm going to go to wide grid to make the icons as big as possible. And default background, that's all good. So there's my back and forward buttons now. They're in the app. You can create more categories, so let's just do that once. I'm going to create another category. Category name, let's call it fellowship hall. And that will be wide grid, and there's that. So now you'll see at the top here we have a worship center, fellowship hall. I don't have any shortcuts in this category, but just in the worship center. If you long press on one of these buttons, you can place this button on the home screen. So you can have a button directly on your phone that as soon as you tap that button, you don't even have to open an app or anything. It's just gonna go to the next slide, or previous slide in this case. What I'm going to do though there's an option in here in under categories. If you hold the categories button down, you can place categories button on the home screen. I'm going to do that for this worship center. There's a built-in icon, and I'll just use this default icon for now. Tap Add Home to Screen. Add to Home Screen. Now, if I go back here, this just showed up. If I move that around, I'm just going to move it down here. Okay, so this actually isn't open. It's opening up a category in this app. So if I tap on that now my back and next buttons right there. Just goes straight to that category. If I would have done a fellowship hall, it basically opens the app into that category. We're just about done, except when you're up there, your phone might go blank on you. If you're talking for a long time, your phone, I think my phone is set for I don't know how long right now, but go to lock screen. We don't want that, so that's why I installed this KinScreen. The KinScreen is going to allow us to not lock the phone or not turn the screen off while we're using this app. So I'm going to go into KinScreen. I haven't opened this yet, or I just installed it, so I'm going to go through all the permissions that it needs. First of all, do you want it to send notifications? I'm going to say allow. This permission is required. KinScreen needs permission to modify the screen timeout. Please grant permission. So I click OK, and we just have to enable this permission here. So it's allowing KinScreen to modify system settings. Go back. Now, for my purposes, I really don't need any of this stuff that's on by default. You can set that. And now, the other thing this app does, it overrides your system screen out time settings. So I'm going to set this. I'm just going to set this to 15 seconds for now. So my screen is going to time out after 15 seconds. But what I'm really looking for here is the keep screen on while using apps. So I'm going to enable that. Now it needs a permission here again. So KinScreen needs to be granted usage access for this. So I'm going to click OK. Scroll down here to KinScreen and just enable that. So KinScreen has usage access now. Now I can click on that. Now I just need to find my HTTP shortcuts and enable that app. So it's going to keep screen on while I'm using HTTP shortcuts. If I'm here and I just wait, I think don't touch anything for 15 seconds. I'll fast forward to this part, but I'm going to wait for 15 seconds, see if my screen turns off. There, my screen just turned off. I'm going to open that back up. Now if I enter this app and I wait 15 seconds again, it shouldn't turn off. So while I have this app open, my screen is not going to turn off. I can freely hit the back and next buttons. So that's it. It's not too complicated. And this way, again, if you're down here, like in the stage message, if I'm down here, now if I'm typing in the stage message, putting a stage message, if I use the back and arrow keyboard keys, it doesn't do anything. However, even though I'm down here and there, if I click on this next and back button, it will still work. I can even do it next. I'm tapping my phone now. Back. There. That's it. If you have any questions, let me know. It's really pretty easy to set up and it works pretty well, I think. Again, this is for Android. iOS, I know, has some similar apps. I know the same thing can be done on iOS as well. If you have any questions, feel free to leave some comments below. Thanks.